How you doing, everybody? This is BroBroBets, and today we have a special. We're talking to DeAndre Green, a fan of the NFL, a black man. And today we want to ask him questions, and we want to hear his thoughts on what it's like watching the NFL as a black man. Dre, how you doing today?
Doing good, man. Just locked in, watching some March Madness right now. We're gonna get a little giggle in there, watching March Madness and things like that. But I'm very excited about this conversation. I am more excited than serious about this conversation.
We were talking, I think what sparked this conversation was about the Lamar Jackson deal and how there's been holdouts and things like that. And it kind of got us, talking and talking. And then we came to this, like, we want to make a special and we really want to point out the racism in the NFL. Do you want to carry on with that?
Man, so just in a nutshell, over the years, man, the black quarterback in the NFL has always been undermined financially, viewed with his abilities and everything. I can go back from when I really started watching football: Michael Vick's of the world, Dante Culpepper's, Donovan McNabb's, Steve McNair's, Aaron Brooks. List goes on, Randall Cunningham. List can go on and on. Warren Moon, Doug Williams, who I'm down the line a relative of, and the great Doug Williams was the first black quarterback to ever win a Super Bowl. So with the Washington Redskins back in the '80s. So the list goes on, man. But when it comes into the grand scheme of things, what Lamar's going through, they have been going through, but I think it's a little bit different because you're seeing something at an all-time high right now. Like somebody that has checked off all boxes from the playing standpoint. You know, he's only been in the league for, I believe, 5 years now, and in those years, his winning percentage has been over 85% for Baltimore, keeping them very fairly relative, winning 2 or 3 AFC North Conference champions. Not to mention winning an MVP when he was told he would only be great as a receiver in the league and his skill set wouldn't work, and just changing the whole culture of football. And he kind of honestly have had him, along with Deshaun Watson, Kyler Murray's, Russell Wilson's, have been the reason for the change of finding a dual threat quarterback that can use his legs a lot to impact the game. And so from when we look at the things from the perspective on the field, it makes no relative sense to why he's being blackballed and mistreated as far as getting a multi-million-dollar deal done this late in the game, and being just, shunned for a lot of other reasons. And I want to start off with looking at him compared to even the great Pat Mahomes or Russell Wilson, and relatively a term that we like to say, and for discretion to our viewers and things like that, I won't use the word, but it's what we used to say, and when we learned history, Black history and things like that, and how the white slave owners and people, and even in modern day today, still want to pair Black people against each other, being even if you're light skinned and dark skinned, or what they would say house inward versus field inward. And like when you look at it, it's plain as day. Patrick Mahomes is not getting the same treatment as Lamar Jackson, and that has nothing to do, for me, in my eyes, about his ability and his accomplishments. Pat Mahomes has 2 rings, Lamar has none. Pat Mahomes has an MVP, Lamar has one as well. So the same type of impact and ability on the field, Pat Mahomes might be a better talented thrower. You can say that, but Lamar Jackson is worthy of the same type of deal for Baltimore as Pat Mahomes is of Kansas City. He's done enough to earn that. He's done enough to respect that in the locker room with them guys. He's done enough to respect that from the city of Baltimore. And so when we look at this, we're basing things off of presentation and perception. You have Pat Mahomes, who's pretty much a clean cut, fair-skinned brother. And you have Lamar Jackson, who's from Golden Acres, basically, where Kodak Black is. He's from Pompano Beach, Florida, if anybody knows what that is. Broward County. He's from that parts of the area where people are very frowned upon and looked at in the wrong way. He wears his braids like the legendary rapper Snoop Dogg. He affiliates with a lot of urban fashion, where Pat Mahomes is very clean cut, has a beautiful blonde, white-headed wife. No offense to her, has beautiful kids, but he's not portrayed as what Lamar Jackson is portrayed. And To me, that's simply discrimination from ownerships of all the owners in the NFL, even my favorite team. Even though we have our quarterback, we don't need Lamar. So I keep the Steelers out of it. We're not in the market for a quarterback right now. We just went and got Kenny Pickett. But to those who need quarterbacks, he's being discriminated for that. And let me not forget, I mentioned all these quarterbacks and stuff. Legendary Colin Kaepernick. You know, everything he went through, it's kind of Lamar's facing a little bit of that right now. And I wouldn't say to that same degree, but what Colin Kaepernick stood for was a little bit different. And so he stood for something well more greater than what Lamar's standing for. And Lamar's not even a disrespectful guy. He's never had any issue off the field with the law, with ownership, in the sense of being in trouble, being late. He's been a great leader by example. I mean, the dude changed his game, got bigger last offseason when they said he was too small to handle the impact of carrying the ball 16, 15 times a game. So he's made changes for that organization, and that organization has consistently not made changes for him. Now, if I want to go in even depth more, you know, to his defense, the front office transition has changed as well. You know, Baltimore has a different GM. Ozzie Newsome, I think, being that he was a black man, and if he was the one that was, Lamar was his last draft pick. And so I think as if Ozzie Newsome was still in that role, he's still in the front office, but he's not in that general manager role, I think things will be a lot different. You know, I think we might have a deal done with Lamar, but since he's not in there, they have this prick of a guy, whoever he is, in there, just making terrible comments about his players and abilities and going off on the receivers and things like that. I just think that they have bad leadership right now in the front office. And John Harbaugh, if we want to keep things in perspective of modern day slavery, I have no, bad blood towards him, but he's kind of an overseer right now. He's just overseeing the situation and not really making any comments because he has no power to it. He loves Lamar, and I believe he wants this deal done. But the reason why you haven't heard him say anything of late is just because he has no authority to, because the ownership and the front office people are telling him to keep his mouth shut. But he knows this is wrong. He knows this should be done. We all know it should be done. And so to kind of get back real quick on the perspective of Pat Mahomes and Lamar, is the same thing as Lamar versus Russell Wilson. You can't tell me that Russell Wilson at 33, 34 gets a $250 million and doesn't even prove himself with the Denver Broncos. Like the year before, yeah, he had a great year with Seattle, but he was running for his life. He didn't have no O-line. He did a lot of great things statistically, but the same year, Lamar did the same thing. Lamar, not only when he won the MVP, he led the league in rushing touchdowns and passing touchdowns. Mm-hmm. So if we want to keep things in line with, when people want to talk about Lamar, well, line up the stats. Well, let's line up the stats. And if they're that far off, then hey, shame on me for not doing my research. But I don't believe in any category the stats are that far off, especially with Russell Wilson and Lamar, especially with Dak Prescott and Lamar, especially with certain quarterbacks, even the white quarterbacks, even Joe Burrow and Lamar, even, Josh Allen and Lamar, whoever we want to name, like Lamar has been, to me, within the last 3 or 4 years, he's easily been a top 10 quarterback in the league. You had to respect him.
Yeah, I mean, that MVP season by Lamar, one of the greatest seasons ever witnessed. I mean, a lot of players, a lot of those guys have never had a season better than that. You kind of touched on the draft a little bit, and guys that were, you see guys get picked over Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson, like Mitchell Trubisky and stuff like that. Do you have any thoughts about, as far as just like how there's racism with the free agency signing on, about racism in the draft?
It's a term I like to use, my good brother, that, respect to my dog, Dr. Umar Johnson, white people will always spite their nose to keep their face. And what that means is a lot of these owners, they know that they're not really trying to win. It's crazy. I got the chance to talk to our former high school head coach yesterday, Reed Boatman. Shout out to Coach Boat. And I mentioned that. I said, I want to go get back in the football and coaching. And my dream job is to be a general manager in the NFL. I want to change and spark things up for all people, all races. you feel me, and become a black general manager there and make an impact. But like I told Coach Boatman is, I'm not going to come back to Edina and coach, or I'm not going to go to any program that is predominantly a white organization or school where I can't make and be my authentic self as a black man and make some good changes. Now, what I mean by that now, going back to the NFL, is a lot of these owners knew a Trubisky of the world, a Zach Wilson of the world, if we must add, some of these dudes who they take with these high picks, that don't pan out. They kind of know the character of what they want to mold their organization and make it look like, rather than taking the risk of a black quarterback. You think about that every time. And I think these NFL people are looking at that even in this year. Now you have, I would say, this draft class, these dudes are kind of more clean cut, but I guarantee you, if, out of respect, CJ Stroud and Bryce Young have statistically and shown provenly they're better than Anthony Richardson. But athletically wise, no. And upside, possibly not even no, because Anthony Richardson has more upside because we haven't seen his best capabilities from his throwing streak and just when he gets with the right quarterback coach, what he could do. But if you go look at what these coaches will look at, they'd probably be like, not even off, just like I said, not off athletic ability and football ability. They'd probably take Will Levis in a lot of cases over Anthony Richardson. Why? Because he looks like a thug. He looks like someone who could have character issues. They'll go dig in deep, go down to his Florida coaches, go to his high school coaches. This is what they do in the league. I'm telling you, man. I watched the movie Draft Day. I have friends that are in the NFL. I know people that, I've had conversations with where these people dig deep to find and research about a person's character, even if their character has no blemish. And I believe Anthony Richardson's a good dude. He never had gotten trouble, I believe, at Florida in his 2-3 years there. I don't think that CJ Stroud and Bryce Young got in trouble necessarily, and they're portrayed as good, clean-cut guys. But before an NFL team really feels confident about a black quarterback, they will easily feel more confident about a white quarterback because they think there won't be any issues. They think this is a white guy that can sell tickets. And in certain industries, if you look at it, look at why now, okay, Carolina's number one. Carolina is, to me, 50-50 a black and white state. You have probably a little bit more white people, but it's culturally equally black and white. You go to Indianapolis, your Indianapolis Colts and those fans, they're used to Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck.
Mm-hmm.
Jacoby Brissett played a couple years, but they don't really want no black quarterback there. They might say that, but they don't want. I'm going to spark up the conversation, bro. They don't want no black quarterback there. If they do, they're going to take a Bryce Young before they take an Anthony Richardson. So,
and so it's like a lot of judgment, and that kind of goes back to black coaches and GMs that there's not, nearly enough. Because of all these white coaches and these white GMs, they are making these racist judgments. And just like you said, that's a really good point about Indianapolis and the culture and the fan base. Think about how racist that is that they would literally pass up on a better talent so that they could have the white quarterback. Like they might pass up on Richardson for Levis. I mean, that is a very interesting point, but that is what needs to be. And
that's not to demise Will Levis's abilities on the field, but I just think that they think that's a polished look more because of his skin color, and that's easily known. I mean, like I said, Peyton Manning played, and no offense to the GOAT, he's a GOAT, he's a Hall of Famer. I got mad love and respect for Peyton Manning. Like, he's a great one of the greatest quarterbacks ever, but he was in that organization for over 15 plus years, and then the next person you get, his adversary, was Andrew Luck. And so it's like you had this type of look in that locker room, in that city for over 2 decades. And it's like the next quarterback they try to get was who? Well, Jacoby Brissett played for a little bit. I'm trying to think of quarterbacks now of late, Phillip Rivers, another guy that fits the mold of that,
And also there's clearly, it's not like there's a shortage of black coaches that are running to be. No. I mean, the NFL is primarily full of black athletes. So you know that there's probably just as many or more applications.
Well, let's look at it.
And
that's a good point you make. Now look at it, and let's keep bringing it back to our modern reference here, modern day slavery. Like 80, easily 80. I don't even got the numbers. Easily 80, and that's more than half. 80% of the league has to be black players. Has to be on every roster. I'm saying there's on an NFL roster for the regular season. What did they say? Is it 55 to cut, 53, whatever? Then you got another probably 10, 15 practice squad. So let's roughly say 70 total players on each team. In majority of all those 32 teams, I don't know the math on that. If you want to do that for me right now, 32 times 70. Let's get that number real quick. I want to get that number because I know people on here like to know statistics.
2,240.
Yep. So 2,240. Out of all that, I'm going to divide that or times that by 0.8. So about over 1,700 of those players are black. I can almost bet that. And so with that, what I'm trying to get back to the reference of modern day slavery, back in the 1700s, the 1600s, the 1800s, all the way up to the emancipation and really Juneteenth. And when really you want to go even further than that, because a lot of African Americans and blacks who were enslaved didn't even know they was free for many years. So that's a reference in itself psychologically anyway, because we're still dealing with that because we want to be controlled by this white dollar and people don't be woke and know who they really are. That's why you have people like Colin Kaepernick, every generation step out and speak on things. You had a Jim Brown, you had Muhammad Ali's, you know, you had people that stood for things different. You had in the NFL still, you had the Bennett brothers. I respect Michael Bennett and what's his other, Martellus Bennett. Yeah, them too. You have a lot of people that can advocate and show, you know, what they're standing for. And so when people go against that necessarily, there you can see what they're here for. But back to the modern day slavery. So back in the day, in the 1800s and all of that, in most of South, you had so many, I can't even tell you the amount of number of slaves in every, you know, field or plantation or whatever. But the percentages I can guarantee you were in the same percentage as comparison to the NFL of how many black people were on one slave crop. And so my thing to that is when you have a league that makes up 80% and you can't even get the face of the franchises to be half black and the face of the head coach, the face of the assistant coaches, and the face of the owners to be black. We do not have one black owner.
Right. And so, yes, I just wanted to shift over to the ownership as well. It's like, you know, you don't have nearly enough black ownership, and that comes down, and then that, you know, that goes down to coaches, and then goes down to GMs, and then goes down to quarterbacks and stuff like that. So with the black ownership, I mean, we just pointed out all these things, all about racism and the history of the racism in the NFL, and the fact that the league is majority black, filled with the athletes.
Do you know where the black people in the, like, far as the business aspect of the situation makes up? They make up in the concessions, in the janitors, in the people that run the game day services and all of that. They'll be cool to put black people there, but they won't put them in the front office. You feel me? They'll put them in the back office in those positions, but they won't put them in the front office. I just want to air that out real quick.
And, you know, I mean, first thing that comes to my mind is that this is a league, and it's filled with, you know, black men and who are working, you know, trying to basically be, you know, live like and be their best athletic self and be the best performer they can, but they're held back by so much racism. There should be a stand in the NFL where ownership says, okay, we have to sell parts of our ownership from every team to black people so that we can have black ownership. What do you think about that idea?
I mean, say that again. You said
it should be, you know, they should have to sell, you know, percentages of the team to other black owners.
Yeah. I mean,
to make things equal.
one thing I think they should do, and this starts with NFLPA, and this starts with the NFL office, not even these teams' front office and these ownerships within these teams. I'm talking about Roger Goodell. Roger Goodell, with all these annual meetings and things they have in the offseason in NFL, it has to come to a point where he has to look in the mirror at himself if he's going to be the commissioner and be like, hey, there's 32 teams. Heck, I know it's going to be more than, grinding teeth to get all these dudes to agree, but I'm the commissioner. Hell, I'll make the change.
Well, and we talk about reparations. I mean, but black people have not gotten the reparations.
So my point with him is, I didn't mean to cut you off, is he's like the president, basically.
Yeah.
And to my understanding as a commissioner, where even like Adam Silver, if we want to even go into that now, that's a whole different lane. But NBA is probably 90% black.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't even want to get in that, but we do have Michael Jordan in there that's the owner. And I know Alex Rodriguez has half ownership with the Timberwolves. There's people of color that have more ownership in the NBA than the NFL. But my thing is, Mike has outright ownership of the Charlotte Hornets. We have no one person in the NFL of that. So we we have 32 teams. Out of 32, if you divide 32 teams by 8, that's 4. We need at least 4. Like, we need a division of, basically one division of the NFL to be, full black ownership. We don't have to have all of them in the NFC North. What I'm saying is, but we need to have at least 4 full owners right now, right now, not even waiting until the next season. But it's
before, and of course there's going to be people saying, oh, like, what are you saying? That's their money. That's their investment. Well, no, I mean, black people haven't gotten their reparations, and it's like taxes, and it's like, it's like taxes and reparations, and Roger Goodell and the owners should agree that, we need to make things equal. We need to, make these things equal and consider it reparations, consider it taxes, whatever. But you have to get to a point where we don't have, people like yourself. And I mean, even as a white man watching I see the racism. I can see it clear as day. And if I was to deny it, that would just be naive and it would be wrong. I mean, we see this and it's still in front of our eyes in 2023. So, we have to, from the top down, you got to cut off the head of the snake. You got to start from the top, and you got to come and then it comes down. So, I mean, that's just my thought on the whole idea of doing something like that. I mean, of course, people are going to say, oh, it's their money, it's their investment, but consider it reparations, consider it taxes, whatever. But these are the things that we have to make some type of extreme change so that we don't have, all this racism coming down, and then it comes down. And then, it comes down to us, and we're watching it, and it doesn't feel right. You know what I mean? Watching this.
No, I feel that. I mean, it starts with conversations, because that's how you gotta. One thing I learned as I'm getting older and growing in anything, as far as working in a corporate world or working a business and just being an older young man, you have to communicate. Communication is number one, and proper communication and getting something done, not just talking to talk. You got to be able to communicate with people. And I think the NFL has done a poor job of that with whoever's in the seat. And that goes back with the Lamar thing, and that goes back with this draft and all the things that we're talking about. People are not communicating on those conversations that you need to have. It takes, and I commend you, Hunter, for getting on here to talk like this, because it is not an easy thing for white America to sit down with black and brown people and discuss conversations that need to be happening. But you know what? It's the thing that things aren't as bad as they seem. And it's things too, when you do that, you feel better for it. And I think that the NFL is shying away from that because they feel like there's a lot of anger built in this conversation, but it's really not. I think people just want to be heard, and changes needed to be made. But racism is a deep-rooted thing, my brother. So it's hard too for certain white people to be okay with it, because that's something that's been built up in generations. Just like black people stem from fear and trauma and and all types of feelings, like to get hard to get off generationally. White people come from the same thing of racial barriers and being racist, and it's just simple, and it falls into this game we love to watch. And I played for many years that I'd be cool with you on the field, but to an extent that I can't really get down with you. And that's maybe necessarily not even the kids that we grow up with, the white kids we grow up with, but it's in their parents. And then it reflects in them in certain things because they don't understand, we don't understand, white people too. But like I tell people all the time, to clear the air about Black people can only be prejudiced. We can't be racist. Racism comes from a wealthy and social status that Black people have never had capability of doing, because we have never ran this world. Well, not this world. We have never ran America socially or wealthy wise. Like, you go to Africa, yes, real Africans are thriving. That's where majority of the wealth of this world comes from, is Africa. And so you go there, gold mines and all type of things. Africans are thriving socially and wealthy wise. Yes, you have kings, like African people living like the Rockefellers and living like Queen Elizabeth and her whole empire and camp. Like, you go to Africa, you'll see that. But here we've never controlled the narrative to that. And so I think there has to be so much done within, and even with us, with this conversation, like we said right before we hopped on, this might be a series. This might just be part 1 to an 8-part series, because there's layers of things that need to be unwind. And I know we're more into the football lane of things, but I can talk about so much going on in the NBA, so much going on in MLB, like there's racial barriers in all these sports that we love, and not even just sports, culture, period, music, food, everything, TV, movies, Oscars, like there's so much. But to start off with what we love the most, which is football and NFL in particular, it's crazy. I think, my thing is, look at the barrier we've crossed in college football now with NLI. I think that was built because of the empire of what Nick Saban did in one of the most racist states in the world, in Alabama. And it's like, he always predominantly had 90% of Black kids on his team. And I don't believe Nick Saban totally is, I think Nick Saban is racist. I think he wanted to win a lot too. And it's different too. There's people that want to win and they know what they got to do to win. And he knew he needed to have Black kids. He didn't care about them people in Alabama telling him he needed a Black quarterback. He didn't want a Black quarterback. He knew what he needed to do to win. He knew how to evolve with the generation and the culture of the change. He seen the value in a dual threat quarterback. That's why he did that years ago. He had John I forgot his name. He had McElroy, then he had Aaron McCarron or whatever his name was.
AJ.
And AJ McCarron. Yep. And so he had them, and he seen, okay, they won sometimes, but then he went against a Cam Newton, then he went against certain people, and he was like, man, we got to get this type of player. So, but what I'm saying with him is the NLI was built because the players like Alabama and the Auburns and the Floridas and the Georgias and the USCs and the LSUs and the Clemsons, like, where you have all these young Black brothers doing so much great things on the field, crazy athletic ability and talent, and they're not getting paid or represented like they should be. But the schools are bringing in $200-300 billion, and so the money with that, they had to change that. And so that's why the NLI opened up. That's why more people tuned into that. And this was a buildup. This wasn't just built off the NCAA football. This was the NCAA basketball. They were bringing in money. Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina. Think of all the blue blood schools, Kansas. Like, these teams having all these brothers on there, they had to find a filter to meet the middle ground to them getting reparations. And so it's a slow game with the NFL because there's more deep-rooted racism. And if I want to get on the main catalyst of the owners of that, who am I going to go to? The Star. I'm going to go down there to Dallas Cowboys, and their owner and himself have said a lot of comments before, has done a lot of actions before, and showed that. And, I remember when he told,
You're talking about Jerry Jones.
Yeah. I remember when he told some radio station or somebody report. It was an article or something where when the Colin Kaepernick stuff was going on, and he was like, if any of my players take a knee, I'm cutting them on site. And like that right there in itself is like, you see, you're dealing with a slave owner telling another man that I'm taking the food off your plate and you're gonna have no job. Like he felt like he can control somebody like that. And I was one of his players, I'd say to hell with you, because go ahead and cut me. I'm not ran by no job. I'm not ran by no white man. I'm not ran by any of that. I know who I am as a man. And this game I play is not who I am. It's just what I do right now in my life. And I got to be able to know how to pivot if I need to go to another team, or I need to be able to know how to pivot and to go to another career. So
yeah. I think those 2 points about how much money those colleges are making, and then the teams are making, and then these athletes, I mean, especially certain positions like running backs, they last like a couple years in the league and they're out. I mean, it's still not fair. I mean, and so this does come back down to modern day slavery. It's like they take advantage of these guys, they use them, and a lot of them, and they don't, their health is deteriorating as they get older. They're not looked after. I mean, it does become like they are using these people, and then they're not getting enough back in return. And with Jerry Jones, I'm going to let you wrap it up, right now, and just say some final thoughts before we close this special.
I mean, even continue real quick with what you're saying with that. Like, look at the mental health. Look at the dudes that have committed suicide. Junior Seau, Vincent Jackson, list goes on and on. Byron Jones just did a great article a couple weeks ago about how his body, I think he's retiring. Dolphins were going to release him just for cap space, but he was retiring. I feel like he's on the verge of retiring because his body. He said it. Like, I remember Fat Joe got on I Am Athlete. Shout out to Brandon Marshall and them in that podcast and that TV show. And he was like, Fat Joe was like, y'all really play this game to get injured. And he's like, man, that's why I love music, because I didn't have to put my body on the line and I could still get the money that where y'all are at. But y'all play this game to get injured. And it's true. If you're in the NFL and the NBA, because the NBA, them players' bodies are affected on that hardwood, because that you're not supposed to run and move at that speed on any surface like that for years. I mean, LeBron now is at 38 and he's had more injuries in the last 2 years than he did in his first 15. So I understand that, but you're playing this game to get injured, and them owners don't give a fuck about that. All due respect. They don't care. Like, especially when it comes to these young brothers. You got all these dudes sacrificing their life and their dreams and their hopes to be legendary player like a Michael Irvin, Deion Sanders, and whoever, forever. And I just think that there's not enough respect or not enough they got the benefits in the health stuff as far as the insurance and stuff after they get retired, but there's still not enough programs for these dudes. You have one of my favorite players lost in the sun right now, and that's Antonio Brown. I don't know when he'll get in the Hall of Fame, but I hope he does. He has the statistics for it. He had a span of 6 years where there was no other receiver that can compare to what he was doing. And I don't think, because of where his mental health is and where his dramatic actions leaving, and the dude has a Super Bowl as well. I don't know where he'll land, but the NFL needs to take that in consideration and not be just, leave him to be in that. But that's what the owners want, because they don't care about these players. And so to go back to everything, what we said in the first topic, which is the main topic right now, because it's the most current event, it's the most latest news, and they don't care about Lamar Jackson. And so I don't know if we get a deal done. I don't know what happens with Lamar. I really don't. I mean, I just hope that somebody will come to their senses. I hope a team matches the deal, maybe even if it's a 1 year or a little bit better. I just hope somebody gives him a deal, because you can't tell me that Lamar isn't as good as, or deserves the respect. Maybe not as good to people, but deserves the respect of a Russell Wilson, a Deshaun Watson, a Patrick, Aaron Rodgers, a Josh Allen, a Joe Burrow. He deserves that type of money. So it's been real talking about this. I appreciate this special, man. This is going to be a series. I appreciate it.